Just over a year ago, we announced our intention to leave the cloud. We then shared our complete 3.2 million cloud budget for 2022. And the fact that we are going to build our own tooling rather than pay for overpriced enterprise service contracts. First of all, cloud or no cloud, enterprise service contracts, you can see. I've worked on both sides, and I've worked with like on-prem service provider. I guess on-prem, like you rent a data center, and they would take the company that I worked for a ride, like because a lot of the people who like they were software engineers, data engineers. There was one ops person, but he was like had to handle a lot of things, so he didn't necessarily have the time to like look through the actual contracts and the services that they were offering, and they were paying like tens of thousands a month. And this was like not. This was definitely a company that was smaller than Basecamp, but they were paying a good amount of money, and even me, like at that point, I was kind of like a little bit more. I was less experienced. I would even look at it and I'm like, this makes no sense what they're charging for. So these enterprise contracts exist both cloud, prem, hybrid, multi-cloud. Like I don't want to say that's like specific to cloud, right? A month later, we placed an order for 600,000 worth of Dell servers to carry our exit, and we did the math to conservatively estimate 7 million in savings over the next 5 years. We also detailed the larger values beyond just cost that was driving our cloud exit. Things like independence and loyalty to the original ethos of the internet. Okay. I will say the fact that you're saying independence, but then everything is like one company, Dell servers, like you're shifting your, what I guess you what is it called when you're like, oh, you're lock-in, like vendor lock-in, you're shifting it from AWS to Dell.
To Dell.
Right. I guess I don't know how modular server infrastructure is now. Like, is it like you buy a Dell? Is it like Honda? Like you can buy a Honda, but there's so many they're like aftermarket parts that you can replace it with.
That's a good question. I think it voids warranty and stuff. Like if they purchased it brand new, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember like we had a bunch of very old servers sitting, and I was like allowed to just rip them apart, fix them, like make use of it for internal tools and stuff, so that we don't have to host it on AWS. So I don't know, like, but there were some enterprise servers like that were running our enterprise solutions, and like you couldn't touch them until like the person, like a technician, comes in, or you would ship them to Dell or whoever you bought it from. That was my understanding, but again, this was like 6 years ago.
Dude, we should do this. We should say we're leaving the cloud, and then we learn the cloud to a bunch of Raspberry Pis.
Yeah.
This is like, it's ridiculous. Azure is taking us for. Still in February, we announced the new tool I had bootstrapped in a few weeks to take us out of the cloud without giving up on all the innovation in containers and operating principles from the cloud. This was the introduction of Kamal. I miss what he said.
Kamal is a tool for deploying your web applications anywhere. Whether you're using cloud VMs or your own hardware, Kamal makes it really easy to deploy new versions of your applications. It has built-in zero downtime deploys. It can do rolling restarts. It even does asset bridging and all sorts of other fancy things that you need to deploy a modern web application. Kamal was originally built for our move out of the cloud at 37 Signals. We moved Hey.com and a bunch of other applications out of the cloud and onto our own hardware. But it works just as well, even if you're just getting started and you want to get started with those cloud VMs.
Kamal's basically Capistrano for containers, what they need to carefully prepare servers in advance. No need to ensure that servers have just the right version of Ruby. That all lives in documents now. You can boot. Kubernetes is a beast. Running it yourself on your own hardware is not for the faint of heart. It's a fine option if you want to run on someone else's platform, either transparently like Render or explicitly on AWS/GCP. But if you like the freedom to move using cloud on your own hardware, or Remix 2, Kamal is much simpler. You can. So it's essentially a way to spin up Docker containers that's simpler than Kubernetes. Shortly thereafter, all the hardware we needed for our cloud exit arrived on pallets in our 2 geographically dispersed data centers, all 4,000 vCPUs, 680 gigs of RAM, and 384 terabytes of NVMe storage of it. Dude, he probably has a picture of this or something, and so he's linking it. Where'd it go?
Yep.
We need to troll, dude. We need to troll. We need to do the same, but we just a little thing of like Raspberry Pis.
Here. There we go. This is learn to cloud.
Yeah, stack 2 pies, and then we we do the same.
We run it off this SSD.
And put it next to like your Wi-Fi router, and it's like, oh, there's our networking right there.
Yeah, this is what will protect it.
Yeah, exactly. Security. 99.99s. In all seriousness, I think I should have prefaced saying that I there's definitely companies where and situations where cloud doesn't make sense. And I'm only trying to just like kind of have a laugh. So there is definitely some good points that he makes, for sure. But we're just having a good laugh here. But anyway. And then in June it was done. We had left the cloud. So how long did it take him to write this thing? To write the Kunal thing. Still in February, we announced a new tool. He bootstrapped it in a few weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
But I think I think he mentioned that it's based on the other tool that they built at 37.
Oh, yeah. You're right. So it's not like from scratch necessarily. Mm-hmm. Someone said going on prem is woke. All right. To say this journey was controversial is putting it mildly. Millions of people read the updates on LinkedIn, X, and by following this very mailing list, I got thousands of comments asking for clarification, providing feedback, and expressing incredulity over our nerve to zig when others were still busy catching up to the zag. He's good with words, you can't deny that. But the proof was in the pudding. Not only did we complete our cloud exit quickly, customers scarcely noticed anything, and soon the savings started to mount. Already in September, we'd secured $1 million in saving on the cloud bill, and as the reserved instances where you prepay for a whole year in advance to get better pricing started to expire, the bill just kept collapsing. Let's look at this thing here. Status update. Okay. Dude, this is sick. We need to have something like this for Learn to Cloud.
Yeah. For the uptime, right?
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Cool. That would be the next thing.
Another thing to add to our list. If anyone in the chat wants to help us work on this, let us know. All right, cool. They got $1 million. So this is as the reserved instances where you prepay for a whole year in advance. Yeah, we read this. So this is their savings. They were using open search, relational database services, EC2 instances, EC2 other, saving plans for compute, tax, Elastic Cache, EC2, and container registry, Elastic load balancing, and then they add other stuff. So, I mean, obviously it does look like here, but the thing, okay, I guess this is just their cloud savings, but they aren't really factoring in. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I guess this graph is fair because it is just saying these are how much we're saving.
Yeah, like from the cloud spend.
Yeah, that does make sense. All right, which brings us to today. The cloud exit is done, but the questions keep coming. Oh, do they keep coming? So rather than answer the same points over and over and over, I thought I'd compile a good old-fashioned list of frequently asked questions. Here goes. All right. Won't your hardware savings be swallowed by bigger team payroll? Okay. No, because we didn't change the team composition after our cloud exit. The same people who were operating Hey and Basecamp and the other apps in the cloud are now operating them on our own hardware. This is the central deceit of the cloud marketing, that it's all going to be so much easier that you hardly need anyone to operate it. Do people think that? I don't think people think that. Dude, chat, let us know. Do you think that? Do you think this line is the deceit, like part of the marketing? This is the central marketing, that it's all going to be so much easier that you hardly need anyone to operate that. Like, I feel so. If anything, I will say that it's more so like the skills have moved. It's been like, okay, you're no longer worrying about infrastructure. Now you can go focus on code or something like that.
Yeah, especially like with managed services and stuff. Like you don't, what would be a good example?
Like, yeah, provisioning a virtual machine is quicker, but then, your time is going to be spent doing other stuff. I won't necessarily say you hardly need anyone to operate it.
Yeah.
Your roles just shift. I don't know. That's my thought. But anyway, I've never seen it. Neither have I. Not at 37 signals, not from anyone else running large internet applications. The cloud has some advantages, but it's typically not in a reduced operation headcount. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think the biggest push has been like, stop worrying about this stuff. You have more time to worry about other stuff.
Yeah. Like even if you think for something like managed database, right?
Mhm.
Now you're not just configuring it on your own server, but you still have to configure it through the prompts or ClickOps or Terraform or whatever you're using to launch that database. But you still need to be able to understand those configurations
Yeah.
and make sure what, this IO means.
Yeah, I will say, oftentimes the people that make the decisions with the money are not very
Mhm.
informed. But I guess we are speaking from an engineering perspective where we're just very aware that, hey, no, cloud isn't like just put it in the cloud, like that famous saying.
Yeah.
So why didn't you just optimize your cloud bill instead? That's a good question. As if it was that easy. All right. Our cloud bill used to be twice as large as the highly optimized, monthly scrutinized, heavily haggled bill we detailed in the 3.2 million of 2022. We had squeezed just about every drop from that lemon, and it was a ton of recurring work to do. That's part of why I'm so bullish on the concept of cloud exits for mid-sized and above software companies. It's extremely easy to spend 2, 3, 4x the amount we were blowing every month on a business with the same amount of customers as we have, which means even higher potential for savings for most. What is a mid-sized and above software company? What does that mean? Like,
Yeah, like what is the threshold?
yeah, because the way I see it, startups, cloud. Just because oftentimes startups are being funded, they get a lot of credits for free. Everyone's offering startups credit. Massively large companies like Coca-Cola, like that is big. Here it says mid-sized and above. Mid-size and above. Coca-Cola is probably above mid-size. Do you think it makes sense for them to get off the cloud and go on-prem like that? So this doesn't make sense. So what are you talking about mid-size and above?
Yeah.
It's extremely easy to spend 2, 3, 4 the amounts we were blowing every month on a business with the same number of customers as we have. But also like, okay, that I can see this, and then for sure. So what I will say, mid-size, I think mid-size, if we were able to define it better, there definitely are companies that are like stable companies who don't expect massive growth, who have like their income coming in, they got their traffic, they don't necessarily have like spikes. They're not trying to like become a unicorn or stuff like that. Those companies, I feel like could benefit from something like that, absolutely. And I think that's where he finds his company. Like they're not like experiencing massive growth. Small size above startup. Like I said, if your company finds yourself in like stable, you're just focusing on maintenance, I think definitely. Once you're past the startup phase and you're not trying to go to like become the next I don't know, the next Microsoft, the next like massive product or whatever, then yeah, definitely. Absolutely. But that has to be defined. Like some business person is going to think like, "Oh, I'm a mid-sized company." Like, yeah, that absolutely fit this bill, but like what does this even mean? All right, anyway. But here's a good one. But what if you had written a cloud native application instead? Cloud native, as in opposition to lift and shift, is often touted as the real way to take advantage of the cloud. But that's again just more cloud marketing nonsense. It generally centers around the erroneous belief that serverless functions and associated on-demand tooling is going to make things cheaper. But if you need a pound of sugar, you're not going to save any money buying single-wrapped cubes. I wrote about that in more detail in Don't Be Fooled by Serverless, and even Amazon can't make a sense of serverless. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like obvious that lift and shift is going to be more expensive. Pretty obvious. Let me see, what else does it say here? But if you had written, again, from an engineering perspective, anyone knows that saying like just write a cloud native application is not easy. It's not straightforward. Like there's that meme now about the Cloud Native Foundation where have you seen like all the companies that are part of, or all the projects that are part of the Cloud Native Foundation, and it's just like impossible to see?
No, I meant the meme.
Yeah, there's that person that's like going crazy, and then it shows this. Like these are all cloud native projects. Like obviously anyone with an engineering perspective will understand building something, leveraging like just even like where would you even start? Like obviously,
Yeah.
Here we go. Don't be fooled by serverless. There's no magic that can change the fundamental fact that If you need all the computing cycles of a computer, you ought to own that computer. And if you start off with a proprietary serverless setup, you might well find that lock-in impossible to escape by the time the rental math no longer works. Okay. So first of all, I will definitely say there are people who try to make serverless fit for them no matter what, to the extent where they're like, oh, they have to like warm up functions and stuff like that. Like, I feel like if you have to warm up a function, you're not supposed to be using serverless. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. Like, if you have to like do some workarounds, probably not the best fit for you. But the flip side is that then you can probably find workloads where that does work, right? In my opinion,
fit the
in my opinion, and then this last part. And if you start with a proprietary serverless setup, you might well find the lock-in impossible to escape by the time the rental math no longer works. So this is on the assumption that, you know, starting off with serverless long term will always turn into something that needs to run on a traditional virtual machine, which I haven't really thought about that. I don't really think, like, I'm sure there's workloads that just can always be serverless. Like,
I think,
right?
Unless specifically like talking about lock-in, like once you start using serverless, let's say you pick one cloud provider and you start building all your functions for that specific cloud provider, because there's a certain way you need to build those functions, right? I think that's what he means. Like, after a few years, when you have developed workloads that are specific to that kind of framework within that cloud provider, you cannot like easily come out of it.
Don't you need a world-class team of super engineers to do this? Okay, right off the bat, I'm gonna say no. I say this all the time. Like, if you learn how to work with cloud technology, you learn Linux, you learn networking, you learn programming, you learn the cloud platform, you learn DevOps, then you can go do hybrid, you can do on-prem, you can do multi-cloud. As soon as everyone, you know, reads this article and they go and they shift to on-prem, like, you'll be fine, because you know the basics. All the cloud is a bunch of stuff networked together. And yes, there's abstractions created, but if you learn the cloud and you learn those foundations, like anyone, I'm 100% sure, like, there'll probably be like tooling differences, maybe like workflow differences and stuff like that. But I think a very capable cloud engineer can just as easily become a very capable on-prem engineer. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Anyway, I never shy away from an opportunity to brag about how great the people we have working at 37 Signals, because I'm legitimately proud of the team we've assembled here. But it would be beyond hubris to claim that they have some special magical insight that are allowing them to operate our own hardware, which just isn't otherwise available. The internet got going in 1995. Cloud as a default didn't happen until maybe 2015. Yeah, and that's less than 10 years ago, dude. So for well over 20 years, companies have been operating hardware to run their applications. This isn't some archaic knowledge that's been lost to the ages. We might not know exactly how the pyramids were built, but we still know how to connect a Linux machine to the internet. Besides, 90% of the expertise needed to run your own hardware is the same as needed to run in the cloud. Yeah, there we go. At least once you get to our scale with millions of users and hundreds of thousands of dollars in monthly bills. Okay, yeah, I would agree. If you become capable with this stuff in the cloud, I think locally you'll be in a good position. I like that.
These decisions are made with thorough like planning and operations, and you sit with the teams before picking up a cloud provider. And in my experience, like I've worked at like a mid-sized company. I've worked at a startup-sized company, which was later acquired by a mid-sized company. The contracts that were in place once we signed up with AWS or Azure and even GCP were for like 5 years or 10 years. So like you're looking at a lot, like a bigger picture.
Yeah, and it all comes down to money. Down to money. Like you might be worried about vendor lock-in as an engineer, but if that is what monetarily makes sense for the people who make the decisions with money, like that kind of just is what it is, right? Does this mean you're building your own data centers? Nobody is building their own data centers outside the hyperscalers and a handful of other mega companies like Google, Microsoft, and Meta. Almost everyone else simply rents a couple of cabinets or a room or a floor at a professional data center operator like Equinix. So they probably provide like the security, right?
Yeah.
So owning your own hardware does not mean having to worry about security. There we go. Or power delivery or fire suppression systems or any of the other details that go into these facilities that can cost hundreds of millions of dollars to create. Okay. So he's renting. He's using a provider. Except, so I don't think I've ever worked at a company that just rents space and then like physically space and then you manage everything. I've worked with a company that they rented space and then they had like an MSP on top of that was administrating all the infrastructure, and then we wouldn't be able to directly work with the infrastructure. We would have to go through them. So, and then that's how I know people get taken for a ride all the time in those kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
But this, not gonna lie, this sounds kind of interesting and kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
You have your own little cloud, your own little private cloud, and you can directly go and work with it. But I wonder how much it costs to like rent the space for all of his.
Yeah, I haven't worked in both cases. Like the only thing, so we had like a room dedicated to servers.
Mhm.
I wouldn't call it our own data center because it was small, so like it was not like huge.
It's a data closet.
Yeah, like a data closet. It had like I think 10, 15 servers, which out of which already most of them were migrated to cloud, and only like 3 or 4 of them were still actively running as backups and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, like slowly we got rid of that too. So I don't know how. Yeah, it is interesting to like have a rented space somewhere and then you have your own. Isn't that what they did in the Silicon Valley?
I don't know. I've never like the show.
The show, yeah.
I don't know, but I think because it does open up kind of, you know how he built his own tool to kind of migrate everything to his data center. It does open up the space of like you're getting bare metal. Like you can go and create some pretty like interesting tools and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Which would, I mean, you could argue how much of that actually is worth your time, like because you also have a product to build, right, and maintain. But I don't know. I think for those who are like infrastructure engineers, or I guess I don't know what they would call them in this. Yeah, I guess infrastructure engineers. It could be like, it seems like could potentially be a pretty interesting gig. What about reliability? Doesn't the cloud do that for you? Ugh, who is asking these questions? Oh, okay. Anyway, when we were running in the cloud, we were using 2 geographically dispersed regions and plenty of redundancy within each region. That's exactly what we're doing now that we're out of the cloud. We host our own hardware in 2 geographically dispersed data centers. Each data center is capable of carrying the full load we need, even critical piece of infrastructure. Every critical piece of infrastructure has replicas. Reliability is largely a function of redundancy, yes. You should be able to lose any computer, any component at any time without being a problem. We have this in the cloud. We have that in our own hardware. One thing I will say, if he did want to spin up another region, you would have to, it would be a lot of work in my opinion. And you know what would have made, I'm going to scroll up to see what would have made this article just like top notch. He shares what he saves, but I kind of want to see what he ended up spending too.
Yeah, like maybe create an Excel graph of how much are the service contracts.
Yeah.
How much is the rent for the racks that you're renting?
Everything. Honestly, I think we're not done yet, but I think I'm going to credit this to being like, he just seems to be an engineer first and then a business person second, to an extent where he analyzed every single bit of this decision and was able to make it because he has a great understanding of the like monetary moves his business makes, like income and outcome, but also just like the engineering aspect. I mean, he built Ruby on Rails. Obviously, he's going to understand stuff like this, right? But like, how many people who can make the decisions are actually fit that same profile?